The snow had been falling since the early hours, thick and unrelenting, blanketing the mountain town of Snowfield in an untouched veil of white. The world outside seemed suspended in time, everything muffled by the endless cascade of flakes. The trees stood draped in soft powdered snow, looking like delicate sculptures, while the rooftops wore a frosty crown. The road, barely visible under the growing layers, seemed to disappear into the horizon, leaving only the faintest memory of its existence. Ethan Harper stood in the driveway of his cottage, gently rocking one of the infant carriers in his hands, while his wife, Lily, adjusted the second one beside him. The twins, only a month old, were swaddled tightly in their blankets, their little faces peeking out like tiny burritos, their breaths puffing out in soft clouds into the cold morning air. It was time for their first postnatal checkup, and the journey had to be made. Max, the German Shepherd, paced back and forth in the snow, his instincts sharp and unsettled. He barked suddenly, a short, clipped sound that cut through the stillness. His voice was insistent, urgent, almost frantic. He barked again, louder this time, each bark laced with a sense of rising tension. Ethan paused for a moment, his eyes flicking to Max, the concern on his face growing. He stepped toward the dog, but Max didn't move closer. Instead, he backed away, stiff with unease, his eyes locked on Ethan. Max's gaze seemed to plead, as if trying to communicate something that Ethan couldn't quite understand. Lily, too, noticed the odd behavior. "He's acting strange," she remarked, her brow furrowing with concern. Ethan, however, didn't share the same urgency. "Maybe he's just nervous about us leaving," he suggested, trying to brush off the feeling of unease. With a quick pat on Max's head, he turned to prepare for the drive. Max didn't follow. Instead, the dog stood frozen for a moment before turning and trotting back toward his corner of the yard, his movements stiff. Ethan watched in confusion as Max picked up an old rubber ball, the same one he had once ignored, even despised. With a few rapid breaths, Max raced back toward the car, the ball in his mouth. He dropped it at Ethan's feet and nudged it forward. His eyes wide, his tail held rigid, as though he was asking for one thing time. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. He'd never seen Max do this before. He leaned down and smiled. "Well, look at that. First time he's brought it back," he chuckled. Lily, however, was already placing the twins into their seats, the hum of her soothing song filling the air. "See you later, buddy," Ethan said with a wave, sliding into the driver's seat. Max stood still, watching them, his bark growing louder. Each one a mixture of worry, frustration, and something deeper sadness. But despite his protests, Ethan, Lily, and their children drove off, unaware of the warning Max had tried so desperately to convey. The day was gray and heavy, the weight of the snow casting a dim light over everything. Ethan's hands remained steady on the wheel as they drove along the narrow rural road just outside Snowfield. The towering pines lining the way were heavily burdened with the fresh powder. In the back seat, Lily adjusted the blanket over the twins, humming softly to keep them calm. Max, now far behind them, had fallen silent. His barks, though persistent, had been swallowed by the vast white expanse. Ethan glanced at the clock, only 20 minutes to the clinic. They were almost there. Everything seemed fine. Then, without warning, the car jerked to the left. The steering wheel yanked sharply from Ethan's hands, and a muffled pop echoed through the car. His foot slammed onto the brake, but nothing happened. The SUV was slipping, the tires losing grip on the slick, hidden black ice beneath the snow. It spun once, twice, then slid sideways off the road. The front end dipped, and then came the crash metal groaning as the car slammed into a slope and rolled, landing on its side between two tall pines. One of the windows shattered in the chaos. Steam hissed from the engine, and the windshield was webbed with cracks. Inside, there was only silence. Ethan's head rested against the wheel. A trickle of blood from his forehead. Lily, unconscious, lay beside him, her arm bent awkwardly. In the back, one of the twins let out a faint whimper. The other remained eerily silent. Max had seen it all. With the ball still in his mouth, he had chased after the car through the thick snow, determined to keep up. He reached the crash site, his paws skidding in the snow as he dropped the ball and stared wide-eyed at the wreckage. Without a second thought, he turned and sprinted off, his breath ragged, claws scraping against the icy ground. He ran down the hillside, through vacant yards, across the slushy streets. A small medical clinic stood at the edge of the main road, barely visible through the swirling snow. Max reached the door in seconds, slamming his body against the glass. With a frantic bark, Dr. Emily ran, startled, froze in her tracks. She had never seen a dog look so desperate, so afraid. Max paced in frantic circles, pausing only to look directly at her, his eyes filled with urgency. Emily, unsure of what she was witnessing, grabbed her coat and stepped outside. "Hey, what's going on?" she called out, her voice gentle but puzzled. The dog stopped briefly, then bolted a few steps away, glancing back at her with a pleading whine. Without hesitation, Emily locked the clinic door behind her and followed the dog, the wind biting at her cheeks and snow swirling around her feet. The German shepherd weaved through streets and across icy fields, his paws pounding in the snow as Emily struggled to keep up. She nearly slipped twice but pushed forward. Finally, the sight of the wreckage came into view. The SUV lay on its side, half buried in snow, the glass shattered and metal twisted in on itself. Emily ran to the car, her heart in her throat. The scene inside the vehicle was grim. Ethan slumped over the wheel, his blood staining the dashboard, Lily lying beside him in an unnatural position. In the back, the twins were still, the faintest signs of life barely discernible. Emily yanked open the back door, cold air rushing out like a deathly chill. Her hands shook as she checked the first baby's pulse, a faint beat. But when she checked the second, there was nothing. "Stay with me," she whispered softly, wrapping the infant in her coat. Max circled them, anxious, whining, his ears flattened against his head. Emily pulled out her phone and dialed 911. "Vehicle crash. Family of 4, critical exposure," she said quickly. "Near the south edge of town, off Mill Creek Road. Please hurry." The operator promised help, but Emily knew it wouldn't be enough. The babies didn't have much time. She heard the crunch of tires on snow, and a cruiser appeared on the scene. Officer Sean Mendes leaped out of the vehicle. "You called." "This in?" he asked, eyes wide as he took in the wreck. Emily nodded, her face pale. "They're still alive, but not for long." As the ambulance carried Ethan, Lily, and the twins away, Max remained outside the clinic, standing still in the snowy yard. His tail was motionless, his ears pricked forward as he watched the flashing lights disappear beyond the trees. Inside, Emily opened the door again. "You coming in?" she asked gently. Max didn't move at first. Then, slowly, he walked past her, his steps careful and quiet. He didn't whine, didn't limp. He simply entered the clinic as though it were a place he had known all his life, a place where he belonged, as if something deeper than instinct was guiding him. Inside the small waiting room, Emily laid out a blanket near the heater. Max settled onto it without hesitation. His fur, thick and cold, was crusted with snow. She fetched a towel and began gently drying him off, brushing the melting snowflakes from his back and tail. "No cuts, no bruises," she murmured, inspecting him. "You look like you just ran through a storm and came out untouched." Max lifted his head slightly, his calm eyes meeting hers. He didn't blink, just watched her as though he understood every word. Later, as the room fell silent, Emily sat nearby, watching Max rest. She couldn't help but wonder, where did he come from? Max's mind drifted, recalling only fragments: the crate, the metal bars, the motion of a ship or plane carrying him across the distance, confined and forgotten. He had been locked away, too weak to stand, too lost to understand. Then, in a moment of chaos, the crate had fallen and the latch had broken open. Max had crawled out, confused, disoriented, and free. He had wandered for hours before meeting Ethan, a tired man with a kind face and soft voice. Ethan had gently scooped him up and brought him to his home. Max had no known origin, no past to speak of. He had simply arrived, and in that moment he had found his purpose. That night, as Max slept in the small storage shed behind Ethan's house, he was not abandoned. He was simply waiting for a new beginning. The next morning, when Ethan found Lily in the kitchen, already preparing breakfast in silence, Max's story had only just begun. Lily stood at the kitchen counter, preparing a meal, her movements slow and thoughtful. She placed a bowl of rice and shredded meat on the table, the steam rising into the air as it settled into the cold room. Then, with a sigh, she pushed a stack of lost dog posters toward Ethan. "Take these," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "Put them up around town. If no one comes forward, we'll talk about what to do next." Ethan took the stack of flyers, his eyes lingering on the dog's photo. Max, the German shepherd who had wandered into their lives just days earlier, was now part of their household. He hadn't expected much when he found the dog, just a temporary place to stay until the owner showed up. But with every hour that passed, that hope of finding Max's real family seemed to fade. He carried Max in his arms and made his way to the local animal shelter. "Can I leave him here, just for a little while, until someone claims him?" he asked the woman behind the counter. She barely looked up from her work. "We're over capacity," she replied flatly. "Even if we had space, we only hold animals for 2 weeks at most. After that, we can't make any promises." Ethan's heart sank, but he thanked her and left. Next, he brought Max to a small community library where an old friend worked. "Would you mind putting this in the window?" he asked, handing over a flyer he'd printed with the words "Lost Dog" in bold letters. His friend agreed, but the moment they stepped inside, an older cat that ruled the place hissed at Max, swiping its claws across his shoulder. Max didn't yelp. He simply stepped back, his eyes calm but with a hurt look. Not from the pain, but from the rejection. Ethan sighed, shot the cat a look, and left the library, taking Max with him. They returned to the train station just in case someone had been by looking for a lost dog. The manager, a familiar face, shook his head. "Nothing yet." "Sorry," he said. But he agreed to post the flyer near the station entrance. Ethan stood for a moment, scanning the crowd. People bustled around, none of them paying attention to the dog by his feet. On the walk home, the snow started to fall again, heavier this time, blanketing everything in a thick layer of white. The town grew quieter, and the distance between them and any hope of finding Max's owner seemed to grow longer with each step. That evening, as they stood by the door of their house, Ethan looked at Max, then back at Lily. He was holding his breath, as if he knew this was the moment that could change everything. "I think he should stay," he said gently, his words hesitant but sure. Lily didn't respond right away. She simply looked at Max, who sat quietly in the doorway, his eyes meeting hers. He wasn't begging. He wasn't pushing. He was just waiting. After a long pause, Lily opened the door wider, a silent agreement passing between them. From that moment on, the house began to feel different. Laughter returned, but it wasn't forced. It came naturally, like the air that flowed through the open windows on warm summer days. The hallway, once eerily silent, now echoed with the soft sound of Max's paws patting across the floor. Toys were scattered around, and shoes mysteriously disappeared, only to reappear beside Max's bed, a small trail of mischief following him wherever he went. It wasn't the kind of trouble that made anyone angry, but the kind that made the house feel full again, full of life, of lightness, of healing. Ethan and Lily couldn't help but notice how the energy of the house had changed. The sadness that had lingered since the loss of their old dog seemed to vanish, replaced by the warmth that Max brought with him. Lily, though cautious at first, began to soften. She never said it out loud, but her actions spoke louder than words. She started placing a bowl of food for Max in the kitchen and a blanket by the window, where the morning sunlight touched the floor. Ethan saw the shift, but he said nothing. He knew it was happening in its own time. One evening, he walked into the living room to find Lily brushing Max's coat while she talked to him in soft, soothing tones. Slowly, without realizing it, her walls began to fall and her love for Max became as natural as breathing. As months passed, the seasons changed, and so did their lives. Lily became pregnant, a moment of joy that Ethan had longed for in the quiet years before Max's arrival. When Lily told him, tears welled up in his eyes. It had taken so long to get to this point, and now, after years of waiting, there was new hope growing inside their home. Max, sensing the change, grew even more protective. He never left Lily's side, always watching her with those attentive eyes, making sure she was safe. When the day came, Lily gave birth to two healthy, beautiful twins, a boy and a girl. Max was there, his tail wagging slowly as he sniffed gently at the blankets, his ears perked with curiosity. He watched over them with an intensity that surprised Ethan and Lily. From that day on, Max was a constant presence. He lay near their cribs during naps, kept a watchful eye during feedings, and often placed his paw gently on the edge of the crib as if keeping count of every moment. Max had come into their lives quietly, without fanfare or ceremony. But now he was as much a part of their family as Ethan and Lily, a true member of their home, inseparable, loyal, loved. Back at the hospital, in the dim light of the emergency room corridor, the local police were reviewing the crash scene report. They stood in silence, tracing the path of the SUV with their fingers on the whiteboard. One of the officers muttered, "We almost didn't see it ourselves." They had discovered the hidden snowdrift, a dangerous trap, undisturbed and unmarked, lurking just beneath the road's surface. To any driver, it was invisible, a silent threat waiting for the right moment. Max had sensed it. He had barked, nudged Ethan, and tried to warn them, but his warning had gone unnoticed. So Max did what he had to do. He ran. He followed the car, racing through the snow, a desperate sprint to get to the accident site before it was too late. Now standing beside the overturned SUV, the emergency responders realized what had saved the Harpers: Max's instincts and his loyalty. Back in the hospital room, Ethan, Lily, and the twins, small and strong, were awake. Lily opened her eyes first, and her confusion turned into a flood of relief when she saw Max sitting calmly at the foot of their bed. His tail was wagging slowly, his eyes soft with a sense of quiet pride. Ethan reached toward Max, his hand trembling slightly as he petted the dog. "You saved us," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The twins cooed from their bassinets, their soft sounds filling the room. Lily, her heart full, leaned over and gently picked up one baby, then the other, pressing them to Ethan's chest. She placed his hand on Max's head, her own tears welling up as she spoke. "We owe you everything," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. Max blinked slowly, as if understanding every word. He leaned into Ethan's hand, his calm demeanor, a reminder of the loyalty that had saved their family. In that moment, they were all together safe, loved, and whole. 3 days later, the Harper family was discharged from the hospital. That evening, their home was filled with life again. The candles flickered on the dining table, casting warm light across the room. Laughter echoed from the kitchen as the family shared a meal, and Max lay content by the fireplace, his eyes soft as he basked in the warmth of the reunion. Lily glanced at Max, her heart full. "We're only here because of him," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan nodded, his smile quiet but knowing. "It wasn't luck that found us," he said softly. "We chose it. From the moment I picked him up at that train station, when the snowflakes were drifting gently around us, it was meant to be." Outside, Max played in the yard with the twins. Their laughter filled the air as Max ran in circles around them, his tail wagging and his paws kicking up the fresh snow. Later, the family gathered for a photo, standing proudly together in front of their home. Max lay at their feet, his chest high, his eyes glowing with quiet pride. That afternoon, Emily Rand stopped by with a new collar for Max. She gently fastened it around his neck, the small silver emblem gleaming in the light. "For the bravest soul I've met," she said, her voice warm with admiration. Word spread through Snowfield. People began calling Max the Flame Keeper, the dog who ran through the snow to save a family, the one who remembered when no one else did. That night, as Ethan and Lily sat on the porch wrapped in wool blankets, Max rested at their feet, his breathing slow and steady. The twins slept soundly inside, the house warm with the glow of reunion. Max's eyes were turned upward, watching the stars twinkle in the sky. And with a soft voice, the story closed. It wasn't luck that kept them safe. It was loyalty. It was love. It was a dog named Max who couldn't speak his warning, but did everything he could to keep that family whole. If you believe in guardianship, beyond words, share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Ask ChatGPT.